Well, tēnā koutou. Hopefully everyone can hear me when I'm talking to the magic machine. It's a little bit like a garage door opener. Can you hear me? Yes.
Yeah.
Is it light?
Not through that one.
Not through this. That's what I was thinking.
I think this is for online.
Online.
Try now.
Hopefully this is for online and you can hear me online, and let us know, I guess, in the chat if you can. We will get started. Tēnā koutou katoa. Kia ora, good evening. Thank you very much for being here tonight. No mind to everybody in the room and indeed to everyone who is joining us online as well this evening. For Susan Ferguson Tupunua, it is my pleasure to be here to welcome to the annual Women's Debate. It's going to be an interesting panel, I suspect, and it's my job to moderate the one of the panel of wahine that we have here, working to progress gender equality in local government. So as we get underway, I guess this is mostly the people in the room, a few housekeeping notes. The bathrooms are out near the elevators. If there is an earthquake, have the siren go off on the people in the room. If there is an earthquake, drop, cover, hold, go up to level 12 if a tsunami warning is raised. Let's hope not. If there is a fire, down the stairs, cross Bonny Street and meet by the old government building's entrance. Also a reminder for everyone in the room and online that this debate is going to be a safe and enjoyable experience for everyone. Regardless of age, race, religion, sexual preference, gender, social or economic class, or indeed ability, and there won't be any tolerance of harassment of participants in any form, certainly not through the Q&A portion of the evening. So we do ask you that all communication is positive, constructive, courteous, and that's something that would be really great for you to keep on their minds. So I quite like this to be a different debate to some of the other ones that people have got into. So let's introduce you to the panel tonight. Let's go from the far end of the table to start with. Susan Freeman Green, kia ora, Chief Executive of Local Government New Zealand. Next to Susan is Rebecca Matthews, current Wellington City Councillor and candidate for the Whangi Board. Then Tori Whanau, current Mayor of Wellington City and candidate in the upcoming local elections for the Māori Board. And then next to me is Afnan Al-Rubai, Senior Public Servant, Community Leader and candidate for the Lambton General Board. Thank you all very much for being here tonight. It's lovely to see you. Lovely to meet you in real life, some of you. So also a thank you from me to the host organisation, the Wellington Branch National Council for Women in New Zealand, also the John Club Wellington and Graduate Women Wellington. So to give you a sense of the format of the evening, we'll be discussing the issues and hearing women on the panel in local politics, discussing what is going on in that world and what is being done to address the issues that are being raised and faced. So everyone will have a couple of minutes to introduce themselves, then 2 minutes each to respond to a number of questions as well. There will also be the opportunity for you all to ask questions as well in the Q&A, so you can either pop those into Zoom chat, or indeed there will be, let me see, there will be people, you can be able to write down questions and submit them to our volunteers as they go around the room. So we don't mind a bit of back and forth between our panel tonight, but of course respectful and courteous. And if you do want to share online about this, we're nearly there to the housekeeping, everyone. Hashtag NZ Women's Debate 25, hashtag Gender Equal New Zealand for social media. So, I don't know if we've drawn which way people are speaking. Which order people are speaking. Should we start? Maybe we should start next to me. Let's start next to me. Afnan, the floor is yours for a minute.
Thank you so much. Well, kia ora koutou katoa. Assalamu alaikum and hello. My name is Afnan Al-Rubai, and I am a senior advisor in government and strategy in public service. I am a mentor, a mum, a community leader, and the co-chair of the Women of Colour Sector Network. Excuse me. And I arrived in Aotearoa in 2003 as a young former refugee from Iraq. Was the Gulf War. And ever since then, I've had to navigate systems that have not usually been built for people like myself. And what that means is navigating at a very early age a lot of racism and a lot of not fitting in and needing to fit in and assimilate which was very confusing to me coming here as a young girl that was just looking for a future in education and a chance at life, that a safe life in a safe country. But over the years, I've worked in different spaces. I've been a barista, for example, but then I worked in the NGO space and worked in the private sector, and then in sales, and then I worked in the public sector, and I realized, I felt that representation, what I have to offer, needs to be on a bigger table because we rightfully have that space. So, and that's what I'm running. Thank you.
Sure, thank you. I think when the you left Belgrade, you have another question.
Oh, I do have another picture. Okay, well, to finish off my point, I'm running because representation matters now more than ever. Because I'm not here to just hold space, but I'm here to play people with people.
Tori Farlow, your go then.
Tēnā koutou katoa ko ngā whirunui koe ngā ora wahine o tū iwi, no taranaki ahau, o kua tuko matua o Pōneke. Current mayor, but hopefully transitioning into the Māori board of the City Council. And I've got to say, I'm excited and relieved about the opportunity that presents if I'm successfully elected. I've obviously had a very challenging term, which was really, really hard at times. And as my colleague who's been there for me a lot and had to pick up some of the pieces, you know, it's actually been an incredibly eye-opening and wonderful learning experience that I hope you might have seen has really come out in the last couple of weeks. And I found out what sort of leader that I want to be. My focus from now, we've worked very hard for our city over the last few years, but now I have the honour of hopefully focusing on the needs of Mount Whenua and iwi. But I also care deeply about women in leadership, representation, change making, and how we can empower this next generation of diverse leaders. Because I think leadership has changed a bit. We're starting to embrace our differences. We're embracing that we might be neurodiverse, women of colour, all those beautiful things that make us quite different. How do we set up systems to allow people to thrive? The second, right? People on planet love our city, so do us. But oh look, it's an honour to be here. I love this committee. I love the women who are here at this table, and it's an honour to be sitting beside them.
Rebecca Matthews.
Kia ora koutou, ko Rebecca Matthews, toko ingoa. I'm a Wellington City Councillor. As you've heard, I serve with the pleasure of Mayor Tori Farlow. It's been a real honour actually to play a leadership role in the council. In the time that I've been here, I've served 2 terms, Wellington City Council, and for some weird reason, I am running for a 3rd term. But my life from outside of before council, I've been involved in kind of gender equity kind of campaigns in various forms since, and I'm really going to date myself here, since I was first elected Women's Rights Officer of the Auckland University Student Association in 1993. And most of my working life has been in the trade union movement, working for things like pay equity. So it's a very interesting time to be here, given sort of the changes that I've seen, the progress that we've had, and seeing this progress be eroded. And, for me, many decades of kind of activism around issues like abortion law reform, living wage, and various issues kind of affecting women workers. And I guess so, an interesting transition to go to be behind the scenes supporting women leaders to make change. So being the person whose giant face is on a sign, and the horror that fills me with. But on the council, I've been able to play a role this term as the chair of the Finance and Long-Term Plan Committee. A very challenging time for our city, but to be able to kind of guide through the vision that we have and try and do that with a less supportive central government as well. So it's good times. I'm also the mother of a 19-year-old daughter who is a student of this university. So yeah, great to meet you all. Thank you so much, Kevin.
And Susan, finally, last but by no means least.
Well, kia ora koutou. Look, it's so good to be here. Ko Susan Freeman Green, te ko ingoa, ko aho te kaiwhakahaere mātua o te kahui kaunihera o Aotearoa. So I am the outgoing Chief Executive of Local Government New Zealand. I have been in the role for almost 5 years and hanging up my local government clogs, but not my commitment to this cause. One of the reasons I came into the role was because I'm so interested in democracy, and always in my career, by background, I'm a lawyer and a mediator. I had a great few years at the Human Rights Commission before moving into, as the chief mediator, before moving into other leadership roles. And I've always taken a strong interest in women in leadership. And in my last role, I was at Engineering New Zealand, and we started the diversity agenda, which I'm really thrilled to see is just still flourishing, and many other ways that I can support and participate in supporting women leaders, women in governance, women actually doing what they need to do. In this role, I have seen the best and the worst of us, I guess, and it is really, you know, what these three women wahine are doing here is so admirable. I am not standing for council, but I so admire, because on paper and in the paper it looks like a horrendous job, but in reality it is an incredibly fulfilling role where you get to make really amazing decisions for your communities. And so the fact that we have two of the three standing again and one standing for the first time is second time. Is this your second time doing? I didn't realize that, but that's so cool. So, you know, like, how cool. Thank you.
We've got several questions to kick off with, and I'd be interested, I guess, in having a bit of a discussion about them, as well as, I guess, we'll have to start somewhere, but absolutely jump in. Feel free to chip in to anyone else's answers on these. Our first question: we know there are many issues experienced by women in politics, from gender-based violence to stereotypes in the media. So from your perspective, what do you think is the number one obstacle women in or running for local government face? Sorry,
I'm trying not to ramble on, but this has actually become a very important topic that I'm deeply passionate about because of lived experience. And this entire term, you know, you've seen it, experienced extreme gendered harassment and abuse and rumours from the internet, my own colleagues, and the media. You know, and when I think about how that's all intertwined, you know, the original rumour of men having sex in a bar, that actually was generated by a lobby group called Better Wellington, which was then passed on to a councillor, Nicola Young, who then reported it to the media, RNZ. And what that does to someone, I can barely explain. I mean, Rebecca was there. It led to complete isolation, depression, and as a new mayor, just not knowing how to handle it. And at the time, I wanted to just kind of make it go away, and just, you know, don't feed the trolls. Where politics is at the moment is that is no longer the right thing to do, because unfortunately the trolls are now standing for local government. Like you look at some, they are the ones on the Facebook pages spreading misinformation. So I've had this cycle of behaviour for the last 2.5 years, and about 3 weeks ago I'd had enough, and then just went, you know what? I'd spoken to a couple of academics about the approach, you know, to be like, is it dangerous to highlight this in public? And they're like, no, we have to call it out, which led to those media articles about Ray Chung and Maurice Williamson and Graham Bloxham. And what that has done has raised the issue, raised awareness of the issue, but I've had other women come up to me and go, thank you for speaking out against that. I think I can stand for local government now. So it used to hide people, now I think it's actually having a different effect.
That's interesting. I wonder who else wants to jump in. Maybe Rebecca, you've been on council while you've seen all this happening.
Yeah, and I guess for me, it's kind of like my colleagues are human beings first and foremost. And when I see and have experienced myself gender-based kind of harassment or racism or, you know, misinformation being spread about, you know, my first response is to look after the person and support the person. And, you know, I guess I've been in 2 councils and I've seen how the different standard that we are held to and the expectation that we have to be, especially if you are a progressive woman, in my view, but if you're a woman, and particularly if you're a Māori woman, that you have to be perfect at all times. And the reality is there are men in local government all over this country doing things that, you know, if the same standard were to apply, would be on the front page, would be, you know, and true things, you know, some of it, you know, which is different than what Tori has experienced. But the true things would be stories and would be scandals if we were held to account in the same way. So that pressure to be perfect at all times is something I know you feel, I feel. And I think some of those issues, we are very close to the public in local government. There are not layers of staff and, you know, at Parliament, it's hard enough, but there are layers of protection that are not there for women in local government. And I guess I just wanted to quickly, you know, deal on one point that, you know, like in 2025, we literally have male colleagues and sadly a few women that we deal with, where we have a conversation internally, who's the man to go and send the message to this person? Because I, even as a more experienced and possibly more capable leader, can't deliver the message or have the conversation or the negotiation with a colleague because it will not land well coming from a woman. It's ridiculous.
Thank you, Rebecca. There's a lot of agreement in the room. Good. Bad? I'm not sure. Susan, what is your view of, I guess, some of the stuff that you've seen from that local government perspective? You know, you're slightly removed certainly from Wellington City Council, but you know, what's your perspective across the country on this?
Yeah, so we are really interested in this and how it plays out across the country. And if we just take a step up for a second, we have like 39% of our elected members are women. So if women are feeling disempowered in their roles, that is quite a challenge. And at the moment, 32% are mayors. So it will be really interesting to see what happens this election. We also know that it's not, and I'm going to say this, but it's not just women who are getting abused by the public in council. You know, it's a tough job for everyone, for males as well. And our members tell us in surveys, I think here's a bit of data, 53% of our members said that the aggressive, abusive or offensive behaviour is worse than it was a year ago. So it has a genuine chilling effect on our democracy. It is definitely worse for women, and it is even worse for women who are not Pākehā. So you know, if you think that half of our if half of our elected members are saying it's getting worse, and our women are exponentially feeling that and experiencing that, we've got some genuine issues. And so from our perspective, we're thinking about all the different ways, and I'll come back to this, that we can respond to that in a systems way, in a connection way, in a support kind of way. But it's hard because it's a societal issue.
Thank you. Afnan, I come to you, and interesting that Susan brings up the chilling effect. But here you are, you're standing again. Is what you've seen over the last 3 years something that you have, or something that has given you pause for thought?
Very interesting that I decided to stand again, but I think, as I mentioned before, I feel like this is the time more than ever that we need to be brave and to step out of our comfort zones. Although you could argue that, you know, it shouldn't be a burden on us women in marketing in this space, excuse me, to maybe have a little bit of courage. It doesn't mean that I don't have any fears at all. It's just more, I feel like it's an absolute responsibility on my behalf to try and do this so that other women watching from the sideline feel like they do have an opportunity to do this in the future. And that it is possible, and there is room for change, and there is room for positive change too. But there's also a huge burden of respectability in politics for women. So if you add to that, you know, different intersectionalities that women have, for example, in my own personal experience, I'm a Middle Eastern woman that came with a Muslim background, and there's a lot of cultural sort of barriers initially into standing for office or being in such a public facing role, and being a room full of men all the time, usually the only woman of colour in most spaces. But also you add the pressure of, okay, well then from your own community, you've made it this far. How far more can you take up? And there's also an expectation from wider society to deal with racism and abuse in the most respectful way. You need to be cautious, you need to be agreeable, you need to be nice, you need to be feminine, and you need to be not so, I guess, not so hard in your leadership. And then you get also, I guess, judged for leading with love and leading with heart as well. So I do feel there has been a shift, but not the shift that we really need. There is so much work to do in this space.
Well, thank you. This helpfully brings us to our second question, which is, to enhance women's participation in local government, improvements can be implemented, such as training programs and regulations to combat online misogyny. So what do you believe is a key solution that should be introduced to improve the experiences of women in local government? I'm going to come back to you, Susan, to start with, because you sort of began to talk about, you know, some of the areas in the space that might be able to move.
Sure. Look, there's no easy answer, and so we can't pretend there is an easy answer. What we have been looking at LDNZ is as I suggested, a multi-pronged approach. So looking at systems changes, for example, that's one area. So for us, you know, we've submitted on the stalking and harassment bill. We're really pleased to see the Realm Authority agrees that, you know, that our elected members can have security systems. We got candidates' addresses off the billboards and their material at the last election, and the ability to attend council meetings online is something that we pushed as well, because often, you know, women need a greater flexibility. So in the system space, there is stuff we can do, and we'll do what we can in that space. Also, there's guidance. So we provide guidance, tools, training, you know, how to stay safe, to arm our candidates as well as we possibly can in ways that will help them stay safe. Then there's a support area. So we've created some safe spaces for women to come together, women elected members to come together and talk. We've had, in our last 2 super local conferences, we've had women's breakfast, and we've worked as well with, you know, Ministry for Women on online safety kits and more besides. But for all that, this is a societal issue, and, you know, creating awareness is really important, because it's only when all of us start to think about the impact, as Tori and Rebecca have so well articulated, on human beings, that we can begin to counter it, because we need candidates, we need good women.
Kia ora, we do need people to understand, but I wonder if, certainly having seen in the last 3 years, certainly looking at the last couple of terms, it's pretty grim out there.
Grim. And and there are definitely elected members who have said, enough, women elected members can't do it anymore, which is really problematic for other ones.
Yes, because what happens next, I guess, we might get to that, but, Tori, I'll come back to you at this point. What do you think some of these measures would bring about as regards change?
I'm speaking about my own experience and having a chat to this fantastic academic, Dr. Cassandra Mudgeway, if people want to look her up. You know, for me, and wanting, like, my experience has turned a bit of what many people out, to be honest, not wanting to stand again, and I totally get that. I respect anyone who would make that decision. But what got me back here was thinking, you know, my tupuna and the woman before me went through so much worse, actually, and they paved the way for me to be here. It's my turn to pave the way for the next generation. And that just kind of helps ground me. This is our fight now. As you say, it's even more important for us to stand for democracy and for representation. I think the practical things that help is we have to start calling out behaviour, which we're starting to do now. So it raises awareness, and that so many people have come up to me and said they're just so disgusted in the behaviour that they've seen from some of our men. And it's helped derail their campaigns and will hopefully stop them from getting elected. That would be a wonderful outcome. People like that do not deserve to be leading our city. It's as simple as that. So, you know, just being really upfront about that sort of stuff. If you're being harassed or experiencing violence, call the police, log it, raise it with NetSafe. It's incredibly important that they know just how serious these issues are. Sticking up for others if you have the strength. I will never forget who has stood up for me. And when they're having trouble, I will be doing the same. But in the long term, what is needed as well as legislative change is education. Our young men need to be educated on compassion, empathy, and media ethics and social media ethics. They have been brainwashed by the Andrew Tates of this world, and that's why they're treating us like this.
Yeah.
So our education system, Finland has done it. They've wiped out misinformation, and that's where we need to go, which I don't think is going to happen anytime soon.
There's a lot in there. I wonder if.
I'm very passionate.
It's good, it's what we want to hear, but I wonder if you would be so kind, I suppose, as to take us inside what it has been like for you at some of the times. And as you say, you found your grounding in your tupuna, but before you got there, what's that been like?
You know, I'm going to be very open about a particular moment because I think people need to know where your mind can go when you're experiencing this sort of stuff. So the day that the rumor from Havana Bar went around, I was sick. I was getting numerous phone calls. I was at home. I knew what had happened, but because I was getting such direct questions from RNZ was, which did you give fellatio at the bar of the restaurant? And I was like, why would they ask me that? Maybe it's true. I knew it didn't happen, but why would they ask me? And then I saw the conversation happening on Twitter. She assaulted that person. So then it started escalating into sexual assault. And when you're sick, when you're new, when you're experiencing that level of harassment and abuse and accusations, your mind does funny things. So even though I knew what happened and I had 10 friends who were with me, who told me exactly what happened, and the bar manager, I still went, but why would they say this? Maybe it's true. Maybe I sexually assaulted someone. And at that split second, I thought to myself, I don't deserve to be alive. You know, because that is where your mind goes when you're a victim of this ongoing harassment. And that, I don't want to see any woman go through that. That's horrific. Anyway, it's taken 2 years to come to terms with what is happening, educate myself on what is happening. It is a purposeful smear campaign directed at people like me and Rebecca. It will happen to you, and I'm sorry that it will. And it's happening to progressive politicians all over the world, especially Jacinda Ardern. And the intention is for us to disappear. And after reading so many academic reports about this, I am now angry. I'm angry that they're doing this to us because they want us to leave the political environment and implement the most horrific laws that will erase our rights, and that is unacceptable. So I'm redirecting that anger, and I want to put it into this, solutions. Work with people like Susan to change the law, gain access for women to access legal support for defamation. I've looked into defamation. It's going to cost me $80,000 to even think about taking someone to court. I can't afford that. So how do we hold these people to account for the damage that they're doing? Well, I'm going to find out, because this is just outrageous.
Thank you for your honesty, and thank you, should take into the microphone even. Thank you for your honesty. Thank you for taking us inside that, and it is fascinating to see how your own mind can gaslight you on these things.
Gaslighting is, I think, exactly the intention of these accusations, and the dehumanization and weakening your spirit. But the best thing we can do is push against it together, grow stronger, fight against it, because the last thing they want to see us do is succeed. So we just have to succeed and support each other.
Rebecca, I'm looking to you. Is central government picking up the baton enough on this kind of thing in terms of changing legislation, making sure that women in local government and in central government actually, and anyone else who might get caught up in this sort of area, that people are actually being protecting them?
No. And, I appreciate the kind of the things like, security systems and, the things about, that I found out I didn't have to put a phone number, a publicly available phone number on my nomination form. And I've learned to do that, to not have a phone number on the council website. And, but it's, and I guess I'm not, in a broad sense, the problem with our government is, our current government, is that they are part of the problem because some of those parties in there want to sow and re-sow, grow back some of the things that we thought we had got past in terms of marginalising groups and encouraging, actually, us to be fearful and hate people that we are different from us and that we don't understand. So I think on the broader context, central government is part of the problem, but also we have to acknowledge that this culture has got worse. And for those of us, for me in my 50s, I have seen it get worse. And that actually, what has happened to Tory has been some people see her holding that role as the first Māori woman mayor of Wellington and go, you shouldn't be there. And it's deliberate. And I guess so I think that there is a lot that and I think, unfortunately, us holding the roles cannot be the ones. We need kind of around us to help us kind of change that culture and kind of resist the kind of the fear and hatred. But I also want to say, I represent the Whārangi ward in Wellington. Councillor Ray Chung, who has come to some infamy in recent weeks, was the top rating councillor in my ward at the last election. And I don't want to be too political about this, because people do have a right to vote for, and across the political spectrum and all of those things. However, voters at this local government election should make this a referendum on the kind of behaviour that they do not want to accept and tolerate in a modern city in 2025. And that's the bottom line.
Yes. Can I just give a slightly different perspective on this? I think central government women politicians also receive a lot of flack. And I think that together they are absolutely committed to actually seeing differences.
Some
And
of them.
some of them, And I think what Ministry for Women, which is a government department, is actually really actively trying to think about ways to combat this. So I do think we need to have that perspective in the mix. What I would say though, is that central government politicians generally get more safeguards and more protection than local government politicians in all sorts of areas. So I think that is a real place that we can try and create some additional change, whether it's security systems or whatever it is. So, you know, whether it's technology blocking, whatever it is, I think there is more resource available to central government politicians than local government ones.
Thank you. Yeah. Afnan, your perspective on this as someone who's stood and who's standing again. I guess I'm interested to know what your view has been of watching this happen, and then I guess that sort of circumstance of thinking, is this going to be safe for me to put myself into, step into this role, which which you want for a whole load of other reasons, but it can potentially come at a really high price.
Very good question, because I've asked myself this before deciding to stand again. And very seriously, because I do have an 11-year-old daughter. But bless her heart, I feel like she holds so much strength and mana from my generation, the generation before her too. And it made me think, I'm a solo parent, and I'm the only, I guess, adult representation or anything successful that my daughter can see. Only her and I at the moment. And if I'm not able to bring it home for her in any way possible that I can do, in terms of leadership, in terms of being financially independent, being independent in any way, in every way, then I will feel like I've failed. So if that means I need to run again, and a third time, and a fourth time, I will either do that to make sure, I'm not feeling local politics, but that leadership positions and positions where my say counts and my opinion counts, and what I have to bring to the table counts. I will always do that to make sure that she knows she's got a chance at life, at leadership, at anything.
I wonder how much your background of being born in Iraq plays into the book.
Hugely. Excuse me. So I was born in Iraq, left when I was 2.5 years old. My mother is a biologist, and she was a teacher and a deputy principal back in Iraq. She had always been a leadership and a beacon of light for me, for myself. She's been a solo parent for as long as I remember. She went through a very rough time as a small parent. When we came here to New Zealand, we came as a family with my father, but I've always known her as a small parent. And unfortunately, I went through the same sort of circle until I decided to break that cycle as well. So a lot of that from a very young age, I've always been built in this way that I needed to be resilient all the time, which is extremely unfair for a woman or a young girl that's really just trying to fit in and be a teenager when I arrived here, but to be expected to be an adult and to be resilient and to fend for your future and to make, have your mark in the world, and to make the sacrifice of my family leaving their homeland to come here as a refugee count for something. There was a huge burden that I was carrying for a very long time. But I think it was almost a blessing in disguise, although it is really unfair, because it had made me who I am today. And I wouldn't change it for anything. So again, I know it's a scary space. I know I'm just going to call it as a very toxic environment. But I can't wait for the system to change, to work for me and to mold for me. I need to be that strong sort of force to mold it to fit me. To fit people like me.
Awesome. Laura, thank you. Let's move to our third question now, which is, are there any key groups that you think could or should play a larger role in improving the pipeline of women into political leadership? action do you want to see from them? I guess this could be anything from schools to central government to, you know, how this all works on social media and tech platforms. Susan, what is the pipeline like in getting women particularly into the
Well, we've just released the recommendations from a working group on electoral reform and local government, which tells us some quite dire stats in terms of pipelines. So one of the really strong recommendations is that civics education in schools. So, you know, people have to realize that, you know, if you can teach kids, all kids, what politics is about and the contribution to make and how important it is that we live in a democracy and how we don't want that eroded and how you have to exercise your rights and you know, parity and equity. Unless we're having those discussions at a school age, it is really, really difficult. And I was speaking to someone in the room beforehand who was saying that when they were working for a council and they got school kids to understand what potable water situation was, then they went home and talked to their parents, and then suddenly their parents understood what was important. So I think that would make a huge, huge difference if we could really start doing. You know, I think it's a challenge. The pay's not great. The flexibility is hard. People can't earn enough. If you are a parent, it is really, you know, difficult, and you know, your opportunity cost of being a counsellor is difficult. However, I would say it's also, you know, an amazing opportunity to contribute. So, you know, we have to keep talking about the value of local democracy and democracy throughout.
Rebecca, what do you see as the pipeline for women coming into this space, and what do you see in terms of some of the women who are coming in or not coming in?
I mean, I first of all, I just kind of want to, because I think we've sort of been coming from this place of kind of anger and hurt about some of the things. And I just want to say the opportunities that we have are amazing. You know, I've become this housing person and I've upzoned, you know, led an upzoning process that, you know, can have a huge difference on our city, and what a privilege it has been to be able to do that. But I think that pipeline, I think people want to vote for women. They want actually councils and local authorities to look like their communities. I think one of the problems that we have is our voter turnout is so low. That I saw a stat about the percentage of 70-year-olds that vote compared to 30-year-olds in our local elections. And I absolutely want 70-year-olds to vote, but I really, really want 30-year-olds to vote too. And our kind of system which is based on this archaic thing called a postal service. You know, my 19-year-old daughter has never posted a letter in her life. Maybe a postcard on holiday, but even that, you know. And so we, and you know, the things that are happening that are making it more difficult to vote, we need to make it easier, and we need that missing 40% that don't vote in local elections to vote, because they tend to skew younger and more diverse. So I think that is important. The other, I think, group that is really important, and I have an interesting perspective here, is I've been a Labour councillor and I'm now a Green candidate, but political parties. The political parties have such an influential role in selecting and supporting people to not only stand and get elected, but to do the jobs they've been elected to do. And I think they have a real responsibility, and I hope, regardless of where they sit, that they encourage and support diverse candidates, including me.
Tori, your perspective on this, the pipeline, what can be done, I guess, to improve that pipeline coming into local government in particular, and where do you see some of the major levers about it?
I agree with everything that has been said. They're really wonderful. Two areas I'd like to focus on. So education is absolutely key, but until the education system catches up, I think, so I'm being hired as a professional speaker after the Mayoralty to educate schools about this very thing. So it's resources and stuff like that. If the government is going to change the curriculum, we need to get out there and start showing our kids these issues, and I can't wait. The other problem I think for democracy has been our media landscape. So especially in particular, the Post has been very politically driven and driving this really negative narrative against the council, and unfairly so. So the way that we report the facts to the public, it's kind of no wonder they have no faith in council at the moment, because, you know, we look like a shambles, but we're not. We have signed a $12 billion long-term plan, and it's great for our city, but you wouldn't know it. So I think journalism has changed over the last few years. I'd like to see a bit more, perhaps, use of media council.
As in more complaints?
Yes.
What effect do you think that would have?
It probably little effect, to be honest. And there are certain journalists, like Andrea Vance, who uses that as a badge of honor or a chance to clap back at us, you know, quite personal attacks, to be honest. And I'm just, so what are we doing? And because it impacts the way that people perceive politics.
Afnan, your view on this, I guess, and the way that we can engage people in a greater and in a more meaningful way, I guess, with local politics.
So everything that's been said, I talked before, and I'm not going to say more around education because it is very important to just get out there and do that. But I think one thing for me, and I speak about this in even the Women of Colour Public Security work as well, is those people who would benefit mostly from the toxic system are the ones that we need to change into allies. And honestly, the hope is still there. So, for example, there are men in these positions who we need to be smart about getting onto our side in a very specific and strategic way as well. And that can happen through dialogue, but also through evidence-based, through just showing what we have to offer. And I'm not going to wait for an opportunity to open up to allow me to come to a table. I'm going to make my own table if I need to, and bring women along with me that are able to show what we can offer to the table. I think that's one thing, but also encouraging the younger generation. And what you will be doing will be incredibly important. But young women, and honestly, this generation is my daughter says, you know, we generation after we are so powerful and they are made of steel, but they are so incredibly powerful and they are very opinionated. So tapping into that potential and making sure that they've got the right access, the right opportunities, education opportunities, but also just backing them and empowering them in any way that we can to chase their dreams is super important.
A reminder that you can ask a question of the panel as well yourself. There will be people collecting up questions in the room, but also you can ask a question if you are online. So a reminder that this is an opportunity that's coming up very soon. This is our last question for me to ask at this stage. It kind of, I guess it bounces off some of the previous areas that we've been talking about. The last question, which I guess is the question that we're trying to answer here, which is how do we encourage more women into local politics? And what needs to be done to keep them there? And I think that's the crucial bit at the end. And perhaps Afnan, I'd like to start with you on this, because, you know, we hear a lot about being empowered and if you can see it, you can be it and all that kind of stuff. And that might get you into the chair. But there's a lot that might try to drag you from it. So I guess that is the nub of it. How do we keep it?
That's super important. So a really wise friend has said to me that sometimes the systems will try and change, but most of the time we'll see a tick-the-box exercise of creating some sort of support systems in place, which is, you know, great that some organisations and agencies have been starting to do that a little bit more often. But as a woman myself of colour with a lot of different intersectionalities in my identity, the best advice I've ever learned is to make sure that you've got a tribe around you who respects you, who knows you for who you are, who can always be there for you, and even the most worst of times for you, more than the good times. and I've got one of them sitting right here, right up front. But have your tribe around you. Tap into your friendships. Those are really, really important for you. Your girlfriends around or whoever's close to you and is considered as a trusting counsel for you. But also be kind to yourself. And I can't say that enough. Do whatever it is that you need to do to look after yourself and your mental health. If it's, I don't know, watching some Netflix and some popcorn, so be it, but it can be anything. And it can sound cheesy, but it's actually really important for our mental health. But also have absolute faith in what you can offer. As women who have lived experience, who have got history, who can bring so many different opinions and perspectives to decision making, I think we are important to have, and we will continue to be here. So, you know, all I can say to men out there or whoever's against this kōwhaka is get ready to be uncomfortable.
Tori, your perspective on this, I guess, in the particular position that you're in, which is that you are the current mayor, but you're not standing for re-election. You are standing for re-election on the, or election on the Māori board, but not in the mayoralty itself. What do you think we need to keep?
So I made the decision to not stand for the mayoralty again because I just knew it would be just as bad as this time. And I kind of thought to myself, it's doing, you know, our younger leaders a disservice because I didn't want them to see that because it might discourage them. By running for the Māori board, I'm putting myself into a safer position and actually getting to do the stuff that I love. So that's that for. To make that safer, to make me want to run for mayor again, what actually almost tempted me recently was the sheer number of women who came up to me to thank me, to give me a hug, to be like, you've got this. It just has such a massive impact that showing appreciation and love for each other. So if you have capacity to do that, just show appreciation and support to your fellow women, because honestly, it just meant the world. Afternoon has actually talked to my dog a few times. I've had a tough weekend. Incredible. Those little touches of love, I think, until the systems change, are really incredible. For me, the harm was just too much. And the love that I got helped, but it was just too much harm. But I think it was 2 weeks ago, I was like, oh, I think I'll run for mayor again. Because like, not today. But then I remembered, actually. I won't do that again. Yeah, so love and support is everything.
Rebecca, what keeps you there?
Yeah, I mean, I'm essentially going to say what Tori said, but hopefully in a slightly different way. Never hesitate to reach out to someone who is in a public role, who either you think did something good and you like it, or they're having a difficult time. Because believe me, we hear from the people that don't like us in a lot of detail. So they are going to tell us every, you know, when I've read things that, you know, I am such a minor person. The fact that anybody even knows who I am, but like they are, when I'm described as scolding or shrill or bossy or something about my voice, I talk too loud, or they don't like my face, or they don't like my hair, or they didn't like what I was wearing, or I told a joke and they didn't find it funny. But every time we are basically an unfillable well that needs love. So every time that somebody has come, sent me a message, I remember the first person that quoted me and I saw that they said what I said back, or the first email that I got from someone that said what you have done has made such a difference to me. We need to put those in our pocket and carry them around with us, because that's our shield and our armor from all of the other stuff. So please do it. And I'm going to do it when I'm not an elected person anymore. I'm basically going to like make it my mission to tell people in public life that they're doing a great job. And I love their hair and their clothes and everything.
Susan, over the 5 years that you've been at local government New Zealand, what are the lessons that you've learned in this work?
Well, look, the need, how great the need is for what we can do to support our women elected members in a really meaningful way. And so I've talked about a few of those, but one of the key areas, and I guess it's an extension of the tribe thing, is to help create a community within our membership of people that can support each other in this sense. And we had our women's breakfast, and we opened it to men as well, and we had a couple of participants there. That many, it would have to be said, but I do think there's a sense of an ability to grow allies in this space that will stand up and call it out. Because often I hear women say, "It's not up to me to call it out, but I will call it out because like why should I put it up with?" But when their male peer calls it out, it has some power. So I think the education piece in that sense, not only of our new and emerging potential candidates, but also our peers and our colleagues around the impact is really important. It's a tough gig, but it's a really, really important gig, and so that is something I have learned so much. Like I will continue to be an advocate for local government, for local democracy, and for women in local government.
I'm going to thank you, everyone. This is the point that we get to move into open it to the floor. So
We've got time for maybe one question, if anybody wants to ask anything.
there's a few. Hopefully we'll get to all of them.
Oh, sorry, mine might be a bit long. Hi, I'm Georgia. This question obviously open to everyone, but maybe more Tori and Susan. In terms of you were talking about how when bad things do happen, that it's really, really difficult to see the repercussions for the people that are doing the bad things. Do you think that it's obviously it would be both good to have both avenues, but in terms of soft law and hard law, talking about seeing it in the education system and teaching our young people how people should be treated and how it should be, or whether trying to see more improvement in legislation and statutes and seeing it come through maybe in the courts as well on how they could maybe streamline the processes. But also I think in doing that, maybe as you're talking about that it is a democracy and it's hard because you don't want to start punishing things like free speech. So finding that line, what do you think in terms of soft law and hard law, what we should really be focusing on?
Who'd like to pick that one up?
I have a wee start. Look, I think it is both soft law and hard law. As a mediator and a lawyer, I think you need both sides of that equation. I always hate the word soft around like soft skills and soft law, because actually they're the hardest things. It's the communication and how you do it and how you influence and how you persuade and how you respect that are so important. But if we can put systems in place, it's such an interesting debate, the freedom of expression debate, isn't it? And I remember that even in my days back at the Human Rights Commission, like, when is the harm so great that you can't, you should have some constraints on it. It's not an answer I can give, but it is a really interesting question for us to be thinking about. So I think we just have to keep leaning into it as in every way, as people who want to see the world better. So thanks for the question.
Anyone else want to jump in?
Oh, I probably have a bias about this whole thing, so it is quite tricky, but I do think, the Labour Party did a lot of work around the hate speech legislation, which was then kind of like sidelined. We have our Harmful Digital Communications Act, which is a useful tool, but I think needs to be strengthened, especially as the online violence accelerates. For me, there is quite a clear line about what is harmful and what is not. We welcome robust debate. Even your policy sucks. Even as a leader, you suck. That's not the stuff that I'm talking about. It's Tory whānau sexually assaulted someone, or I want to drag you behind my truck. Like, I think, so I got that comment over Instagram, and I tried to report the account, but Instagram have removed all of their content moderation and tools. So That also raises the question around what sort of regulation do we need around our social media giants who are allowing this unsafe behaviour to fester. So I'm all for free speech, but I'm not for online violence.
I want to share a success story I had as well. It starts with receiving a death threat. But like, there was a Twitter comment which was like a threat of violence against me. And to my advantage, this person, you had the same profile pic and used their name. And so I went to the police. So I had really good experience. I went to the police. The police went and visited this guy. All they could do was warn him. However, this guy worked for an organisation actually that our council had a relationship with. So our CEO talked to the organisation this guy worked for, and it became an employment issue for him. He did this, he threatened me on a work device, and it did not work well for him in his employment. And the only thing that I'm sort of sad about is I feel like our culture is more accepting of that kind of behaviour now than it was 5 years ago. And so that's the kind of, I think, the bigger context. But that was a good experience where the police were good and the employer was excellent because they did not want to be associated with that.
I don't know if you have one more question. One more question if it's a little short one, maybe. Go to this side of the room. Thank you.
Good evening. I'm loud, don't worry. It's for online. Good evening. My name's Rosanna. I'm part of Graduate Women Wellington. So Tori, you already mentioned one of the things that I wanted to bring up, which is why is slanderous behavior acceptable? Why are not people who are employed by government have the protection of government lawyers to then prosecute people who are telling blatant lies, which would hopefully dissuade other people spreading misinformation. I'm just wondering sort of why that hasn't been done. And I'm also wondering why we, with digital laws, etc., why we aren't taking away trolls' voices. If we have to legally allow social media in the country, why aren't we able to legally disallow any of the hate, violent, aggressive speech? AI could do a very good job of filtering out all of these voices who are just saying, I hate you, you should die, you look ugly in this. Like, none of that needs to be published online. That could all be wiped in microseconds. Why are we allowing them any voice on any public site whatsoever?
I think that's a really good question. I think there are some tools being developed at the moment around, like what could be put in place around actually stopping those comments that tip into that line that Tori's talking about being actually published. So I think that is a genuine and real opportunity that people are looking at. I just want to say one comment. That is that, as Tori and Rebecca have said, our councillors and mayors have an extremely high threshold of tolerance for robust debate. And, we are not talking about precious behaviour here in terms of community dialogue. You expect that, you welcome it, it's part of being a politician, right? So we are genuinely talking about the areas that tip into that, threats, violence, and we see that online and in person.
Yeah, from my experience, it's been stunning. So for Ray's defamation, the CE looked into a code of conduct to have him punished, but even that wasn't actual punishment. Elected members are very difficult to punish. So that was going to cost 80 grand on the ratepayer. Couldn't accept that. So then I looked at my own personal lawyer, also going to cost 80 grand to take him to courts or whatever. So it's the way that the law is set up is just it's not for victims of any kind of harassment. And this is, for me, this is minor. I would hate to think what a victim of sexual violence has to go through. It's not set up for us. And in terms of that social media regulation, it's the social media giants who are controlling that low level of content moderation. I suppose we'd need to legislate to enforce some actual moderation on them. I don't see this government doing that, but, yeah, no, I'm kidding.
No, I think that is just about everything we can fit in our. But it's I think that's everything that we can talk about tonight in the time that we have. Just about wraps up the one on that here. Our thanks to our panelists, Susan, to Rebecca, to Tori, to Afnan. Thank you also, of course, to our hosts, the Wellington Branch of the National Friends of Women, the Golf Club, and Graduate Women Wellington. A reminder that you can watch this again. You can watch it back as it has been live streamed on the Wellington Branch Facebook of NTWNZ. So you can take a look at it again if you would like to do it forward. Seeing you all in person or online in the future. Don't forget to vote. Get enrolled. Thanks so much for having me. And see you next time. Happy Download. Not too long. Thank you.